Okay, so before we split this drive to replace the water pump, remove the upper from the lower, we're going to need to drain the oil out of it. That's because when you split the upper from the lower, there's an oil passage that connects, oil from the upper to the lower through a small hole, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we have to drain it down at least half, so that it doesn't leak all over the place when we remove the upper from the lower. It's a good opportunity right now to just drain it all out and replace the oil. Changing your lower unit oil is very important, so do that annually, and you should be fine. But that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to drain the oil out through this lower hole, that lower drain screw there, and we're also going to remove this upper drain screw so that it can ventilate and drain out. So that's what we're going to do now. Alright guys, Alpha 1 Gen 1 lower unit oil replacement. We're doing it while it's off. You don't have to. We're changing the water pump, so I'm taking this opportunity to show you quick how to do it. It's simple. There's two screws, right? They're very big flat blade screwdrivers, and for that I always use flat blade screwdriver on a 1/2 inch socket. It fits great, it's big. Use anything smaller. I mean, you could use a big flat blade screwdriver, but you want to make sure it's very big. The small ones will just damage it because they're usually in there pretty good. So that's what I use. Alright, there is a lower screw, drain fill screw, and there is an upper screw. Now, they are on different sides with an Alpha Gen 2. This is a Gen 1, but the procedure is the same. You're going to remove both of them, let it drain out, and fill from the bottom back up till it comes out the top hole, cap the top hole, and cap the bottom hole. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is let it drain out. Alright guys, I got the upper screw out, the lower screw out, and a little bit is coming out of the upper hole. That's normal, and it is not milky. It's nice and dark green, whatever, but it's not milky. Now you can see the lower screw is milky. Why is that? That's because water settles to the bottom. Water is heavier than oil, so we got a little bit of water in there. Not sure where it's coming from. We could pressure test it. It's a pretty old drive. I'm not going to worry about it. I change my oil at least once a year, if not twice. So that's all. But you want to make sure that you have good new O-ring seals, gaskets in your drain, in your vent. Now, in there, I haven't picked them out yet, but there are our seals. You can see it right there. It's blue. It's new. That is the main reason why you get water in your lower unit oil. Typically people don't change those. I change them every time. Must have a probably prop shaft seal going a little bad, or the drive shaft beneath the water pump seal maybe. I might pressure test it, but I'm not going to worry about it. That's such a small amount. It's been sitting all winter, so it made its way to the very bottom. Not a big deal. Alright, so I'm going to let this drain out all the way. I'm going to pick the seals out of there with a pick, small pick, get them out, make sure everything's nice and clean in there, put new seals on the screws, clean them all up, and we'll refill it. Alright? Alright, so what we're going to do now is pressure test and fill this Alpha Generation 1 out drive. We just did a water pump on it, so whenever I have the upper off of the lower, I always pressure test it to make sure we didn't damage the oil passage O-ring in between the two halves. And it's always a good idea to pressure test them when you have them off anyways. So that's what we're going to do. Now I've already removed the drain and fill screws, or drain and vent screws, and I've already taken a pick and removed the old blue seals, gaskets. Okay, I've already taken them out, made sure that the recessed area is all nice and clean in there. We're ready to put one of these screws back in. We're going to put the lower one back in and just snug it up. Because we're going to be taking it back out. So just snug. And then we're going to take our pressure tester, which threads in to the vent screw. It's got an O-ring on it, so we don't need a seal because it's got an O-ring on it. And then we're going to put about 8 pounds in it. Maybe 9, 10. So I've got 9.5 pounds on it. Now you really should let this sit for a few minutes and measure how much it has leaked down. It should not leak down at all. But in my experience, if it holds and doesn't leak down drastically, it's fine. We're putting it back together and we're going to ship it. And it's holding at 9.5 pounds, no problem. Now, what I'll do too is just to check if you've got milky oil or water in your oil and you suspect a leak. First of all, it's most likely a drain and fill screw seal. So don't go crazy trying to find out which seal is bad. Make sure you're confident with your drain and vent screw seals first. That's generally where the water comes from. But if not, you know, it's not uncommon to have a bad seal, of course. So it's holding pressure fine just now, but if I say I start to move the prop shaft a little bit or the input shaft a little bit, then it can start to leak if it finds a bad spot. So if you suspect a leaky seal, make sure that you turn everything. Make sure it's in forward gear and you turn this input shaft so that the propeller turns and wiggle everything, and that way if there is a bad spot on a shaft where a seal rides, you'll find it by wiggling stuff, whereas it may not leak statically. So do that. Now it is leaking down a little bit, which I suspected because I had good seals in there. Remember when we drained this thing, we saw a little milkiness to the oil, which indicates water in the oil. So it must be getting a little in there from somewhere. This thing is original. It's got a big block 454 on the other end of it, so it's already overrated. I'm not going to go crazy because I wouldn't be surprised if this thing blows up one of these days. It's probably near the end of its life. I change my oil at least once a year, generally twice a year in these anyways, so a little bit of moisture in there is no big deal, especially like I said, it's near the end of its life, I think, anyway. So we're gonna fill it back up and put it back on the boat. But I just wanted to explain how to pressure test and how to fill this thing up. All right, so we're gonna take this thing out carefully. It's got a little pressure in there. Okay. We're going to take the lower screw out. So I'm going to get everything ready. I got a nice new seal on that screw and a nice new seal on this screw. Now I put the one without the magnet in. It doesn't really matter for testing purposes, but when we seal this thing back up for good, we're going to put the drain screw with the magnet in the bottom. All right. You may find that on Gen 1, your Gen 2 or something, that you might not have a magnet on either one. You might find that you have magnets on both of them. I prefer at least one magnet because these things don't have oil filters. Your oil filter is your magnet. That's what's going to collect any metal filings. And metal filings are normal, very, very fine ones. So fine you can't even tell they're, metal filings, but real fine ones are normal. you start to get some little flakes or chunks, then you got a problem. I haven't found that with this. There's no chunks or anything, so maybe it is in good shape yet. Alright, so this is my oil pump. You can use the one I showed earlier with it screws onto your quart container and it's a hand pump. That's fine. This thing is worth its weight in gold for me because I do a lot of oil changes. This is an adapter for Yamahas. This is a Yamaha adapter, so that screws on. So I'll take that off. We'll go into the bottom. We're going to pump from the bottom up. So that gets threaded in there. All our valves are open. I'm going to plug this quick just to see if it is pumping in there, building a little pressure. I'll hear it squirt out air. Yep. Alright, so this will take a minute to do. And we're just going to fill it up and keep an eye on it, and I'll start to see the level in there rise real quick, and I'll know to let off the valve here. Now once we do have oil come out the top, I'm going to let it rest and settle for a few seconds and make sure that it's right up to the bottom of the hole. And then we're going to plug the top hole, remove the pump out of the bottom, and plug the bottom. By plugging the top hole first, that creates a vacuum. It's like putting your finger over the top of a straw and pulling it out of your soda, and it holds the liquid in your straw. Okay, here it is. It's starting to come up and creep out the hole a little bit. Like I said, I'm going to let it chill out for a second and kind of settle to a level. And then put the top screw in. Now, these hold about 1.5 quarts, I think, so when you do it, grab yourself 2 quarts. Alright, we're good. We're going to put the top screw in. Snug it up. Don't go crazy, but you want to make sure it's not going to come out. But don't go crazy. Alright, now we're going to take the bottom of the pump out and put the bottom screw with the magnet in the bottom. Okay, tight and tight. Good. And that's it. We're good. We're ready to put this thing back on the boat, and we got a nice fresh new water pump in there. So that's how you drain. I'm sorry, we've already drained it. that's how you pressure test and fill an alpha out drive.